Well, that's probably our cue, Sean, to get started. It's 1 o'clock, so thank you so much for joining us today. We're very excited to have you here today to talk a little bit about our predictions for 2024. Sean and I spend a fair bit of time thinking about and looking at what is happening currently in the marketplace and what might be coming. And so we thought it might be a great opportunity to share with you some of the things that we see happening in the marketplace and what we think those might inform for you as strategies as we go through 2024. So it's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Megan O'Neill. I am the VP of Global Insights here at Bond. And joining me today for this predictions dance is Sean Klassen. Sean, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm excited for this dance. Megan and I work a lot on strategies for our clients in this space. I also head up innovation, so thinking maybe a horizon down the road about what might come into play for some of those strategies, program designs, things like that. And you'll also hear from a colleague of ours, Sonia, towards the end, may pop in with some Q&A and other questions that have popped up during the chat. So looking forward to that. Megan,
Yeah,
any
so
other
on
housekeeping?
Quick housekeeping. We do have the chat function enabled. It is anonymous, but if you have questions throughout, please feel free to pop questions into the chat. We will be paying attention as we go. If we have the opportunity to answer your questions sort of in flow, we'll certainly do that. But if not, we'll wrap up and make sure we leave time at the end of the presentation for any of those questions that have come up during the presentation today. All right, so with that, Sean, kick us off.
Sure. So Megan and I are going to pull from a few different sources. Here at Bond, we've obviously been conducting the loyalty report you may be familiar with. Think of it as kind of the longest standing original account, deepest, pick another adjective, data set on benchmarks around loyalty behaviors, around the attitudes people have about their participation with brands, and maybe even some of the attributes that they declare for us or exhibit. We also run and operate several programs, and so are privy to kind of the real world behaviors around how people are interacting. The second column is probably the one that we'll pull on the most. Megan and I pulled some of these predictions together out of a lot of the trend material that we, as part of a subscription, make available to clients every 30 days. They and their teams will collect around what has happened in market, we'll make sense of it together and draw out the implications. And in particular, dive into some of the moments that matter data that we've got in a library on some 6 brands, some of the best in class brands in this space. And then lastly, thinking very comprehensively and tapping into some data sources about how people spend their dollars, vote with their wallets about where they want to keep interacting and maintain participation with a brand. And so that Wallet IQ data, a bit of a data asset of ours to figure out not only what a brand can see, but what might be outside of their purview that their customers or their members are choosing to spend on. Maybe by way of context, we think of the topic of loyalty by way of the kind of experiences that people want to lean into and engage further into, such that it creates that outcome of loyalty, and less so just about the relationships. A bit of a point of view is that those relationships, while many of us have been working on them, aren't enough anymore, and that it is far too easy to be swiped left or left unread or left unread, depending on the channel of choice that you're using to communicate with customers. And as a result, we just recognize that relationships can come to an end, but it is a bond, something a little bit more sticky that stays with people and has them produce the kind of outcomes that most brands are looking for in this space, looking for customers to exhibit that they will spend more, that they will come more often, that they will recommend, that they will pay a premium for our services and products. And those are the outcomes that, in our opinion, a bond inspires customers to do. But don't just take our opinion. Megan, we stay in touch with customers. What do they have to say about this?
Yeah, so grounding in the loyalty report data that you referenced, Sean, what we've been seeing happen in the marketplace is a continued increase. So interest from the customer's part in participation in loyalty programs. And what's interesting is it's not happening within one category or vertical. It's actually happening across the bar. And we're also seeing that it is over and above the levels that we actually saw pre-pandemic. So that dip that we sort of saw as a result of pandemic influences, changes in behaviors, et cetera, has not only been, sort of returned, but consumers are actually having even higher expectations of loyalty programs, and they're willing to participate. They're interested in the value proposition that's being offered at a greater level than we've ever seen before.
Megan, some of that data, I think, has us making predictions that those levels of engagement are going to continue to rise. Competition is fierce. For context, Megan and I are often talking with our teams and our clients about the fact that a lot of programs are running hot. They economically were built on top of core businesses whose fundamental economics have changed for all the aforementioned reasons, changes in patterns and behaviors and routines. But as a result, they've put sort of band-aids and restrictions and other kind of components into their programs in order to try and let out some of that steam. But in doing so, many of them have gotten, I would contend, too complex for their own good. A bridge too far for a lot of customers who are now feeling insecure about showing up at an airport lounge as to whether or not they're going to get in, or that their points go as far as they used to. And all of that insecurity, I think, is actually an opportunity for brands to capitalize on, to install confidence in their customers. And the last point there is just that as the world continues to contend with varying degrees of privacy expectations and legislation and regulatory changes, this is the moment where loyalty is being asked to do a lot more with owned customers, known customers, customers who have hand raised to be this level of declarative with a brand. And I think in a strange way, Megan, you'd probably corroborate this. A long time ago, loyalty was only asked to do sort of retention-oriented things, and now it is doing a lot of acquisition-oriented things, which is a new role, and we're delighted. So let's jump into a couple of those predictions.
Yeah, we're in the same space. Yeah, let's jump into some of those predictions, Sean, particularly around, this concept of programs running too hot, probably over complex. What do we do? How do we solve for that?
I think a lot of this notion is solving real human needs, creating utility that is going to be stitched into people's behaviors and routines, that they can build that kind of dependable behavior around because it has that much value in the way that they're going to interact with your brand. And so don't mishear us. There are lots of other mechanics in programs that can be tweaked and optimized, especially now as brands require that. But also there is a lot of unmet needs in the market. And we're going to share some examples with you where we think some brands are doing a good job of meeting those.
Yeah, so let's have a look at the marketplace. And I feel like we always have to have a conversation about Amazon when we're talking about the marketplace because they do so much and they're so influential. So we're just going to start there. We're going to start with Amazon. We're calling this Prime Play because one of the things that we've noted about Amazon over, I would say, the past couple of years has been a trial of a lot of different kinds of solutions for value propositions for customers. They've tried on Amazon One. They've tried on Amazon Health. They've tried on creating variations of ways in which you can use your profile to enable other things. Now, the focus has really come down to how to use that Amazon profile to pay. How can we create the most seamless pay, which of course Amazon has long trained us to believe is a large part of their value proposition. And so the new thing that we're seeing in market is their partnership with Meta. And so the goal of this partnership is to create greater ease within that payment experience and enable platforms that Meta owns, Facebook and Instagram, to become more easily shoppable. So rather than it having to be a click to link to the bio and from there to go elsewhere, it's now the opportunity to link your Amazon known customer information to your Meta login information, and therefore be able to one-click purchase off of Amazon, off of the Instagram and Facebook platform through an Amazon delivery solution. So what we're starting to see is this combination of the simplicity, right? Things got very overly complex. There's One, there's Prime, there's, different variations, there's health. They're starting to simplify down to it's the utility of your Amazon payment profile used in a multitude of ways that add ease and convenience for the customer. And we're starting to see them move away from trying to name all these things something different to it just being the ability to curate what your Amazon Prime membership will look like and utilize that membership login to do other things more easily and efficiently for you when you're out in the world doing other transactions.
Yeah, Meg, you and I have sort of talked about loyalty has had all these components that we've thought were sort of part and parcel all of one topic. The identifier, my ID, now is a thing that can be propagated across a lot of different brands, not just a single brand, or have that mingled or commingled with the identifier that I have with several other brands. And I think, from our vantage point, that is only going to accelerate and continue into the future. What about other ways to buy that we're getting very clever about?
Other ways to buy. Okay, so this stays with Amazon, but Sean and I actually were so intrigued by this idea. They've introduced this thing where you can actually get your friends to vote on whether you should be purchasing something or not. So you can send the link out to your friends with these little emojis on the bottom that are like, yes, do this, not sure, no, definitely not this. You can basically instigate your friends to peer pressure you to make a purchase or not. I mean, we call it, of course, getting data signals, but it's an interesting concept because Amazon will start to understand how are your friend groups influencing purchase behaviors around what kind of products do you look for that kind of engagement or social proof to happen around your purchase behaviors? What are the influencers of where your friends kind of go, I don't know, and yet do you still purchase? Do you not purchase? So just think it's such an interesting introduction of a social tool, a social proof tool into the purchase behavior, but it's actually the consumer's instigation to their friends to help them make a purchase decision.
And that
Kind of wild.
householding referral mechanisms that have sort of long been the vestiges of kind of legacy loyalty classic program structures are now starting to morph into sort of looser, softer versions like this peer pressure-y buy now because they said so mechanic.
Another one that we thought was so interesting was this idea of pre-commitment. And we've worked with pre-commitment for quite a long time because we find there are different elements of engagement that work really well with pre-commitment. It can be hard to give up something that you've already earned, but you're more willing to give up the potential of something you will earn in the future when it comes to things like charitable donations and those kinds of things. But what Panera has done is they've taken the success of their SIP club and they've added into their app this ability to do what they call crunch time ordering. And this is to preset your order ongoing. So rather than going into the app every day and setting your order for your pickup on the way to work, you can actually just say Monday through Friday at this time, this is my order. And it'll have it preset for you. And what you do is shortly before your order, you just confirm. So the app is going to pop up a notification, say, hey, we've got your order set for today, good to go. And you just click confirm. But this idea of pre-committing to your purchase behavior, I think is also another really interesting sort of opportunity for new utility, ease of experience, and has the potential to have strong opportunity and benefits for the program experience as well.
I should mention in the corners of many of these slides, you'll see a little thumbnail that is the actual artifact from the story and whatever month this came out in the past year. After this, we'll absolutely make a version of that available to all of the attendees. And Megan and I are more than happy to give sort of a subset of this or a rendition of this to any of your teammates who couldn't necessarily attend today. So reach out towards the end and we're happy to do that.
Great call out, Sean. And Sean, I know when we talked about this idea, you sort of took it a next step further. So this is where we sometimes, imagine what the future might look like. You were saying this is a really interesting thing for something as consistent as, say, your coffee order during the weekday, but it could have application into a completely different vertical.
Yeah, repetitive behaviors is sort of the name of the game in our space. Having people pre-commit and sort of the way Panera has been training customers that this is now a function and a feature available. Rides to work and transit and commuting, whether that be taking advantage of an Uber One membership or using kind of local transit or other bike share programs, that sort of like pre-commit in those spaces would be a way to galvanize customers and sort of keep them satisfied in a level of brain space that they don't have to exercise. I don't have to think about the lunch order other than single click confirm. I don't have to think about whether or not the car is going to show up, that bike is going to be there, etc. And so I think we'll see more and more services like this start to embrace the idea of that sort of pre-commit upfront.
So now a super hot topic that you and I spend a lot of time talking about. Partnerships.
So salacious. It's true. It might sound counterintuitive to say that the future of loyalty is about hookups and promiscuity and polyamorous behaviors. I think loyalty has often thought of itself as sort of a sovereign topic. I have these loyal customers and I'm not going to pretend that they're cheating on me, and I'm not going to recognize that they're doing something in adjacent categories. And I think more and more, a lot of brands are looking to link arms with one another and figure out how they can serve shared customers better or share customers that each don't have. And so I think in a strange way, this is how loyalty is being tasked with acquisition and all kinds of other business objectives in a modern, version of loyalty than it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen an incredibly busy marketplace when it comes to the partnerships that are happening, and whether it's the opportunity between Starbucks and Delta to understand the denominator. I mean, the truth of the matter is, wherever we go in the world, we can probably find a Starbucks, and it'll feel somewhat like home and familiar. And so that ability for them to actually say to Delta, hey, listen, Sean's now in Boston. Did you get him there? Did you know he was there? Is a really interesting opportunity for partnership to really help inform how much, opportunity, their capacity there might be to grow a particular customer group. But then we also see, partnerships that are linking because of physical integration as well. So these partner and partner relationships with, say, Ulta and Target. What is really interesting, if you've been through that experience, is that whether you're at the Target sort of point of purchase or you're at the Ulta point of purchase, it will actually ask you to input the other loyalty program if you have it. And it very purposefully links those two things. And so you and I have had these conversations about, in the past, it used to be about or sort of which one do you want to earn? Now it is an and, it's a combination, because they see the benefit of understanding the reason for coming in. Is Ulta being in-store a traffic driver? Is it actually enabling a new occasion, a new purchase behavior that Target might not have had before? And we get this question. Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
I think that data sharing, Meg, is always a question in these conversations. This is a very overt way that customers are declaring themselves willing to share that data between both parties, not just in the T's and C's that they sort of breezed by on the way in some kind of opt-in, but in like a regular everyday sense, so that it doesn't become forgotten. It doesn't become a backdrop. And I think that's a really, really important point about the overtness of this kind of thing. If you're going to double dip on both Ultimate Rewards and Target Circle or wherever those partnerships are made, that the customer is aware and cognitively participating in that sort of thing.
And based on the data, because the question we get asked all the time is, do these partnerships work? Do they actually have impact? And so we measured this in this year's loyalty report. And the key thing that we came to understand is it is about awareness. So when you can make the customers aware of the opportunity to link, they will go through whatever hoops are in place for them to actually link those. So 3/4 will go ahead and link once they know that that opportunity is available to them. And do we see lift? Yes, we do. We see significant lift on their loyalty to the program, and the program makes it easier to do business because there are often those shared benefits that happen in that equation that make it feel more like an and equation rather than an or equation. So to answer the question about whether these partnerships are actually being successful in driving engagement, yes, they absolutely are. Your biggest opportunity right now is to make sure that your membership is aware of the opportunity to link the partnership and to have a better experience with a partner as a result, because the outcomes are definitely there from a financial standpoint. And so when we look at some of these partnership opportunities, we have to look at Uber because they're really a partnership ecosystem. They are stretching into a number of places that are adjacent. In some cases, they actually wind up with a partner linked to competitor through another partner. And so they're really looking to understand the entirety of this footprint that is around mobility, but also extending into solutions like Spotify. And so an ecosystem like this starts to drive a data understanding that, you know, the vast majority of brands would really strive for in order to understand a bunch of those adjacent behaviors and where they have clear opportunity. So next up, we're going to talk a little bit about partnerships that have come together because of a particular reason. So we really liked this one between Tim Hortons and Metrolinx, which is focused around day part, right? So not necessarily two partners you'd naturally think go together, but when you think about them as day part, they make complete sense. So this was the launch of the Tim Hortons credit card value proposition. And what they did was offer free rides on Metrolinx when you were using your Tim Hortons card to make that payment for that trip that you were taking. And so they credit you back a value of a certain number of trips as a result. And it really was reinforcing the value of this experience with the two brands coming together around day part so that you're getting everyday utility associated with their particular co-brand card at the same time as you're associating, you know, that coffee and travel that happens as part of your morning commute.
I think we see lots of adjoining value propositions, people teaming up in order to serve a customer. You remember at the beginning that utility, that real need. You know, none of these predictions are necessarily mutually exclusive. This is, you know, people's commute. This is all part of one ritual, you know, on a daily basis. And so I think tapping into those things is where we're seeing a lot of ripe territory for partnerships.
And also around day part, but what we often refer to, Sean, between you and I as frenemies. We see partnerships come to light that we maybe wouldn't expect because they're competitive within a category. We've seen this with running shoes before. We're now seeing this happen in the morning day part with, you know, McDonald's and Krispy Kreme actually partnering up together. And you would think normally that they would be quite competitive, but they must have an understanding of their ability to drive new customers across each other. And let's be honest, McDonald's doesn't necessarily want to take on, you know, the need to develop a product, a donut that is good. It's a Krispy Kreme donut. It actually is an easier path to figure out the right partnership opportunity that enhances that experience for the customer, consolidates their traffic behavior around the morning routine into a McDonald's because of the seamlessness with which they can get both products together. So we've seen this come up a couple of times, but this frenemies opportunity, we still think is one that's actually really important to consider. Who is within your category who you might actually want this opportunity to come together and partner with?
It's fun to table these because the immediate reaction is typically, gasp.
And then we're going to go to the other end of the spectrum. We're going to go into luxury for a moment, because this is where we're starting to see nested programs. And it's not the only place, but I'll start here and then we'll go into some of the other places that you might see nested programs. Not sure if people had the chance to see this yet, but Qatar Airways has leveled up the game when it comes to the pre-boarding experience by offering a lounge accessible for their top tier members or travelers that is outfitted and within a Louis Vuitton store in the airport. So if you want to talk about exclusivity and access and status, I mean, this has to be it. Having a Louis Vuitton exclusive experience as your lounge experience is going quite over and above, but no question these two brands are looking to figure out how do they nest experience within each other that feels really differentiated and unique. And we're seeing that happen sort of across travel as well. MGM and Marriott Bonvoy have come together, and it's not that we haven't seen these kind of partnerships together in the hotel space before, but what's unique and happening here is once again, they're doing that multiplier effect. It's an and, it's not an or. You can earn Marriott Bonvoy on your MGM stay, but you also get unique experiences as a result of being a Bonvoy member who is staying at an MGM property.
I think the concept of this sort of nesting carries through in many categories. There would be cosmetic companies on the shelves of beauty retailers who are being delivered by third-party delivery services. The same could be true in QSR, that I choose a Coke or Pepsi with my meal instead of a coffee or a water or a milkshake or something else. And so there are brands embedded sort of naturally inside of each other. And while maybe the Krispy Kreme McDonald's example wasn't necessarily a natural, I think, some of these are customers on a journey, customers looking for variety, something special in their travel experience. And I think, each one of these at maybe different ends of the spectrum is trying to cater to the scarcity value of that once in a lifetime trip. The accentuated melty desserts on the inside of the Louis Vuitton lounge, probably adds to that scarcity.
Absolutely. Okay, gonna keep us moving forward in predictions because we've got so much to talk about in this webinar, but let's talk a little bit now about AR.
Yeah, I think Megan and I are often in our teams as they're, scouring the transcripts of earnings calls, and they're deep down Reddit thread holes. All of that work is to try and figure out what is hype and what is actually going to be helpful in the practical near term. Now, AR has a lot of different incarnations. I think what we are seeing is its ability to mend gaps or maladies in a customer journey and some kind of experience that are otherwise hard to do. We'll give you a couple of examples of that, but it also brings a level of data that maybe otherwise in the real world would just sort of evaporate, that is hard to otherwise capture by asking people to tap and swipe and click and all of those kind of other things on their phones in the aisles. Some of it can be by phone. Some of it could be via wearables. I just happened to be at CES, and there's a lot of fanfare around a lot of things over there. But let's give you some practical examples about how this tech can mend parts of the journey and allow loyalty and known customers to play at sort of different aspects of the journey: acquisition, engagement, and yes, the classic retention.
Yeah, so we'll start anchoring first into what we call the moments that matter. And this is work that we do consistently to measure the customer journey across all different verticals and moments in time. And actually in this year's loyalty report, we actually did this globally around a number of different vertical categories. So we could understand where loyalty programs and co-brand experiences were meeting the expectations and the needs of customers, and where they had opportunity because there was a customer expectation that wasn't being met. And I think the importance of some of this work is to be able to identify, where do you really focus your efforts? We can't do all the things all the time, but we need to understand which are the ones that are most impactful to the overall customer experience, and where are we falling short that we really need to shore up an experience. So this is just a bit of a visual example that I've pulled in from the loyalty report to understand in the online journey, where are some of those moments? And we actually saw this consistently across almost every vertical journey. It was often an inspiration. So, what are the things that make me feel motivated and compelled and engaged? How do I do discovery? How do I find something new? And then in the moments of confidence to actually convert on the purchase. So that's where we focused some of our examples from the marketplace today. So this is a really interesting one. This is actually out of the Netherlands. And this was an idea that McDonald's had. And if we talk about inspiration, here it is, right? They're saying, when do you get that moment of being like, oh, I could really use some McDonald's fries right now? And what they actually did was enable technology to scan your TV. So when you were streaming, I won't suppose that anybody uses cable anymore. When you're streaming a show off the TV, you could actually hold your phone up and sort of scan the meal thing that was on the TV, and it would take you directly into the opportunity to make a purchase and have that delivery come home so that you don't have to interrupt your streaming. Your McDonald's gets delivered, and that moment of sort of feeling like, oh, yeah, I'd love that right now, gets satisfied through a new technology capability.
Impulse at its finest.
Right? Okay, other places that we're seeing this show up. This is Marks and Spencer. We've also got Reformation mentioned here because their store experience also does include a lot of augmented reality opportunities. And this is really about creating ease and navigation. So the Marks and Spencer experience literally acts like a Google map, but for the store. And you can tell it, I am looking for pizza, and it will guide you exactly through the store to show you where to pick up the pizza. Now, what we love about this is that there's opportunity then to also say, and Pop is over here, and if you want something a little healthier, and you can bring the loyalty value proposition into that equation, right? In the moment, you can think about how you expand the basket by knowing what they're there for, but creating opportunities along that path to grow and expand, offer value and experience in the moment so that they can, enable a greater purchase than they maybe had intended to, but it all feels seamless, customized, making it easy for me as an experience.
Sean came in declaring pizza. There's 5 things along the route I'd like to show him as discovery. We know that that is missing from a lot of e-com experiences. There isn't that impulse buy sense of discovery that necessarily happens. It's very utilitarian. It's very purpose driven. I think, also knowing that Sean is 2 weeks overdue in buying Doritos or something else that goes wonderfully well with pizza. I think that's the sort of power of something like this. Instead of, not knowing he was there until the last 15 seconds where he is checking out, paying, and leaving. And so I think this is doing a lot of work in the rest of the journey.
Yeah, and in the Reformation example, it's the change rooms, right? Their mirrors are augmented reality mirrors that enable you to do things like, even though you have a certain color on, you can actually try on all the colors without having to change the shirt that you're wearing. You just tap the mirror. You can actually place your entire order through the mirror and pay, and they just meet you, outside the change room with your order packed and ready to go. So that sense of sort of experience and convenience happening through the store. But also there's this important moment around confidence. And so we're seeing augmented reality really be used consistently across a number of brands to create that sense of confidence. The examples we have here are from IKEA, from Sephora, and from Zalando. And so whether it's being able to sort of picture what that new item is going to look like in your space, whether it's being able to do virtual try on and feel a confidence in your online ordering because you sort of see what it's going to look like on you. And Zalando, it's really about, they create an avatar with your measurements so that when they're showing you product, they're showing it in how it would look on you. And you're not seeing it on a model that does not look anything like you and trying to imagine whether or not this is going to have a good fit for you. So this moment of confidence is one where we see a lot of utility around AR in order to help people properly envision imagine what the experience or what the product experience is really going to be like for them, especially as we continue to purchase online quite a bit. And then the last one we have here around augmented reality is more about emotional connection. So we've talked very functionally about the journey. We're starting to see augmented reality come into how do we build that relationship that Sean was talking about at the very beginning. So a couple of examples here with Disney's release of their big movie in the holiday season, they created an augmented reality tool that meant that you could put it up toward the sky and it would show you the star constellations. You could tap on them, and through that, you could actually donate towards the ability to make a child's wish come true. And so there was, the sort of the fun experience and the shared experience of being able to use augmented reality to see what the stars look like, but then the fulfillment of being able to sort of pay it forward through this donation capability. Lego is actually using it to create connectivity between stores. So they do use it in store, and they actually use it quite a bit to make sure we have the confidence that we're actually going to be able to build the thing that we're buying in the Lego box, which sometimes feels quite overwhelming. But I love this idea where in a couple of stores, what they've actually done is set up these augmented reality screens where you get to create a little avatar, a little Lego avatar of yourself, but you can engage with somebody who is actually at another store interacting on their screen, and you engage with their avatar. And so it's a sense of connectivity and community and belonging between the experience you're having in your store and another store that has similar capability. So that idea of connection, I think, is also starting to come to life through this AR experience. Okay, everybody's asking, Sean, what do we do with Gen Z? What do they want? How do we meet their needs? We know they're the future. What can we say? They're not an easy group to just, get right necessarily.
The coveted group, and often talked about as aliens or unicorns or some other sort of species of a sort. I think the behaviors that we're seeing out of Gen Z, now that they are sort of moving further and further into sort of the mainstream of a lot of e-com files and a lot of other databases, they're having a disproportionate impact on the way that brands need to start thinking about things. And so because they are also teaching other consumers who live in different generations, who live in different parts of that demographic spectrum, they're teaching them to have expectations as well, even though they didn't grow up that way or they never shopped a retailer like that, et cetera. And so I think, paying attention to them pays double duty to make sure that you are building some of the stuff that's maybe been a little bit more elusive in the loyalty conversation, really deep engagement, starkly emotional kinds of connections, and making sure that there's so much evangelical enthusiasm around it that it leads to material advocacy, people being referred for reals into the brand, as opposed to just an NPS score where you might hypothetically in the future refer somebody into the brand. And so I think that there's a lot of really good things across a file, but born of this particular cohort.
Yeah, I mean, this cohort can bring social power, I think, like no one else. They actually don't want to show up just by themselves. They want to show up and bring everybody else along with them to see and learn what they've just seen. So we're going to start with Balenciaga, which maybe we don't necessarily think of off the top of our heads as a Gen Z brand, considering the price point to enter. But hey, these guys covet luxury. It's no new news, I think, to anybody. But what was interesting here was the combination of experience. So what we know about Gen Z is they are all in on experience. They want something really unique, really differentiated, something that they can go talk about because they are such a social group. And so what Balenciaga did was they created this clothing line that is embedded with the ability to connect to music. And so they actually have a music library, unique music access to a certain group of songs, etc., that you actually access through the clothing. And so this idea of it being one thing that connects you to something else, and that other thing is social and it's shareable, etc., is a really compelling way to get this group engaged.
Like if you back up and sort of squint at this, here's what we're talking about. We're talking about an NFC tag stitched into the actual garment that leads to music you can only get through that encrypted link. So if you don't own the sweatshirt or you don't have a friend who does, then there's no chance you're going to hear that playlist or hear that track and be sort of on the inside. It is scarcity, literally stitched in a way that fashion has always done a very good job of, but in these new, far more known customer trackable digital forms. And I think, if you had told somebody 5-10 years ago that like you'd buy the sweatshirt because of its loyalty benefits or its perks, people would have looked at you like you had two heads. And now this is a model that a lot of fashion brands are looking at, not just Balenciaga.
And it's interesting to me because actually Levi's was the first one to do this, to stitch the NFT, or sorry, and
The
NFC,
yeah.
That's what I was trying to go for, NFC tag in the clothing. But they actually thought of it from a very functional standpoint, which is that they wanted to use that for you to scan and pay. So they actually thought like the garment helping you pay would be a really compelling feature. Not for this group. This group wants something social, shareable, exclusive, etc. So it's interesting that a brand like Levi's was actually the first to do this, but it's a brand like Balenciaga who's figured out how to do it for Gen Z in a way that's super compelling for them.
There's got to
Now
be a
we
reason
know,
that's $300.
right? Exactly. We know this group loves to be on their phones and they love to be in virtual spaces. And so we see brands show up here all the time. And a little bit further on, we're going to answer the question about do you build or do you borrow? But for this one, what was interesting to us is e.l.f. Cosmetics has launched this metaverse space. And what was interesting about it is that it is intended to do a lot more than just engage you with e.l.f. products. What it's intended to do is actually help you do things like learn to budget and really functional things, but do it through a gamified social space kind of way. So it feels very accessible, it feels fun. Of course, through that, they're promoting connection into their product. These guys have been all over Gen Z. They had a partnership with Dunkin' Donuts, I think it was about a year ago, Sean, when the whole I can't remember, glazed look was in on cosmetics. They literally created cosmetics that echoed the glazed donut. So these guys are pretty innovative and iterative when it comes to engaging this group. So what was interesting to us here is that they built a metaverse space that wasn't just about makeup try-on or conversion. It was actually about like, what do young people need to learn about, could be fun if it was gamified and would want to do in a social setting like this. And they're not alone. Metaverse, very popular for brands when it comes to figuring out how to engage with this particular cohort, but coming at it from a lot of different places. And so I'll go to the L'Oreal example first, because I do think this one is so interesting, which is what they actually did was create the ability to create an avatar that moved across different metaverse spaces. So one of the things that happens now is when you enter a metaverse, you have to build your avatar, but that avatar is only within that particular metaverse. And so what L'Oreal actually built was the ability to build an avatar that could be the same across those different spaces, so that whatever avatar identity you built would be yours and visible and recognizable across different metaverse spaces. So an interesting concept, all a play on the hairstyles that were available for your avatar, but an interesting concept about making that identity consistent across these spaces that you might engage with. Fenty took the point of view of co-creation. So they've created this space so they can really, get aligned with Gen Z about what they're looking for. Gen Z gets to participate in the creation of product, in color selection, in identifying things that they would like to have that maybe don't exist today. So this really for them is all about creating a space of collaboration, because as we know, when you've had the ability to co-create, when you've had the ability to influence something, you're much more likely to be waiting on the wait list to be able to purchase that thing when it comes to life. And then 7-Eleven went into Fortnite. I feel like Fortnite went quiet for a while. Now Fortnite's back in a big way. But they partnered with Fortnite and created a gamification of experience. So as you were playing with your friends in Fortnite, you were actually looking for these vehicles that were associated with this game. When you found one, it got you into this exclusive space that was happening within Fortnite. And so we know that's also really compelling when Fortnite has had exclusive concerts, et cetera. There's a lot of social pull from Gen Z to find each other and bring each other into those kinds of experiences. So this was a little island that was created with the 7-Eleven experience, and it had connectivity back into their loyalty program. So by doing activities on the Fortnite 7-Eleven experience, you actually earned benefits within your 7-Eleven loyalty program app. And so the connectivity between those two to say, yeah, show up and have a fun experience with us here, and we'll actually give you value back that you can use on your next trip to 7-Eleven, I think was really compelling as well.
There was a question earlier, Meg, in the chat, just sort of about, the notion of gamification, and now we've kind of gone all the way into actual games and these kinds of settings. I know that you teed up earlier, there's often a debate inside of a brand to say, do we build it? Do we borrow it? Do we abstain entirely from it? What the hell are we going to get out of it? Maybe let's do a little commentary on that, and then we'll get real deep into the tech in a second.
Okay, sounds good. So, yes, we get asked this question all the time. Do I need to go build a space within the metaverse? We would kind of caution. We would definitely say visit first. No knock to Nike Land. They have done a lot of work to build a place that people will go. What we find is that when people show up there, it's usually because of a social event. So LeBron James is in Nike Land. There's a whole lot of Gen Z showing up to go have that experience and be able to say they were there, and they weren't there, but they were there, and they had the experience, etc. But if you go there on a Tuesday afternoon, you might find that Nike Land is a little sparse as far as, finding other people to engage in. And so when we noticed what Ralph Lauren was up to with Polo, we thought, well, this is interesting, because what they're doing is offering a skin within Fortnite, and you have to pay for those. I've spent a lot of money on a closet full of skins that don't exist and my son never uses anymore, but they're highly coveted. They cost real money, and it's an interesting introduction to the brand for a very much younger consumer, right? They're not ready to buy Ralph Lauren yet, but Polo being a compelling brand to them can start actually at a very young age by engagement like this within Fortnite being a skin. And what they actually realized was that there was enough interest in the Fortnite skin experience to create the product. And so they did a very exclusive run of the Fortnite boot. It was not at a price point that the average 14-year-old could come anywhere close to, but was extremely coveted by the Gen Z set for its scarcity, its exclusivity, and the fact that they could show all their friends that they got the real version of the Fortnite boot. So a really interesting way to test and learn, build some engagement, jump off that engagement into actual product opportunities before you're going down the path of Nike and actually building out a full metaverse experience for your customers.
Yeah, if we back up or sort of zoom out on this for a while, we know intuitively that loyalty starts maybe long before the purchase. This is the modern day equivalent of a Ferrari poster on the wall by a kid who doesn't even have a license. And I think beyond that, beyond being able to sort of engage and garner a data signal that says, there's natural affinity here, there's a keen interest in the brand, maybe long before traditional purchasing power for a garment of clothing or an automobile, et cetera. And I think if you just take that lesson into kind of other categories and other settings, there's a lot to be learned about how to get way upstream with would-be customers, soon to be eventually customers, and make sure that it is something they can access, something that they can engage with, and something that they can have sort of an early level of participation with the brand. And so it doesn't have to be in these spaces. These spaces just tend to be a really great conduit to put those into practice.
Okay, 10 minutes to go, Sean. We're going to jump into our last topic, which is
Okay,
around
nice.
AI. I feel like, it's the buzziest 2 letters around right now, AI. So let's talk about that and its applicability to loyalty.
So I think, and I see a question in the chat, we're throwing a lot of things at people, a lot of buzzy AI, AR, pick an acronym. The question on the table is sort of like, it's a lot. How do I sequence these things? Where do I start? Where do I dive in? And I think this is sort of why our lens on this topic in particular, maybe the buzziest of all. I expected to walk through CES and NRF and have every booth call out to me how GPT'd it was and how OpenAI works with OpenAI, the way that Google and Alexa sort of showed up in every piece of electronics and other things. But the practical applications are real and right in front of us and working today. And so the sentiment is about scaling at speed, the way that we build more human relationships with customers that has them want to engage. And so Megan and I are going to share with you a handful of examples of where people have done that. And when you think of all of these topics, AI included here, I hate to give the sort of classic consulting answer, but it depends on where you're at already as a brand as to where you should jump in. You're not ready, potentially, to do Odyssey the way that Starbucks has morphed a lot of its loyalty efforts in that direction. But there are real, tangible, tactical, and practical ways to start putting some of this tech that isn't maybe as glitzy as some of these examples, but has real P&L impact on how the program operates, lowering cost, and increasing engagement, and all the requisite behaviors that feed into a CLV. Not that we're all calculating CLV the same way, but let's double click on this topic and maybe we'll circle back to that towards the end.
Yeah, so I feel like this first one lands really well in that practical space, which is how Zara is now using AI to actually inform real time what the store footprint should look like. And so what they've done is they've identified stores that lead the pack, that lead the rest when it comes to customers jumping all over a hot product. And they're sharing that information now in real time, so that literally the other stores down the line could understand that they should probably move that product from the far back corner up to the very front of the store, because if it's leading with this particular location, it's going to be hot with them very shortly. And that's an incredible way to use AI in a way that is super practical and winds up having a direct impact on the success of that store's sales within the same day. Now, they can take that a level further because they have utility like Store Mode to be able to understand what are customers searching for, what sizes are they looking for, what particular products are they scanning when they're in Store Mode to see if that product is available in their size, et cetera. And they can start to collate that data to understand on a store-by-store level as well. Here are the products that are driving the most engagement when it comes to for interest, trying to find size, where do I locate information that's happening through their app as well. Now, the next one is Spotify, and Spotify has been using AI technology, I would say, for their 12, maybe 18 months now. And what we like about what they've been able to do with that technology is create an experience that feels very customized. It's very personalized, right? You can identify what Spotify list you might want to listen to today because of the color that you like or because of the mood that you're in. And it's using AI to generate that real sense of personalized experience. And what that's doing for Spotify is actually helping to keep them out of the conversation around what their monthly subscription fee is. So if you're Netflix and Disney Plus and all these other streaming services, at the moment, you're caught in this whirlwind of, do you do an ad-supported tier? Do you have less cost per month because it's an ad-supported tier? Or do you have a premium cost in order to get out of the ad-supported tier? A lot of conversation is actually happening around cost. And Spotify has kind of sidestepped all of that by making it curated, by making it customized for you. And they've used AI to deliver on that experience at a customer level. Sean, this one we thought was really interesting. It's new to market relatively, but it's focused actually on the payment space and how payment can use AI to create a more customized, more valuable experience for the cardholder.
Yeah, there's a couple of things at play here. One, it's doing some matching between, some roster of merchant funded offers out of a catalog of sorts to bring forward just the right ones, just the ones that Megan's going to care about. That part is probably not rocket surgery, but it is better than the way most people execute it. And then on top of that, the credit space, and Megan and I spend a lot of time in sort of payment topics. The credit space is one that is got blurrier and blurrier edges. The introduction of buy now, pay later was maybe the gateway that has created a lot of different incarnations of how people get, quote unquote, approved for some kind of extension of capital or lending. Everybody's got a slightly different concoction that is beholden to regulation, is not beholden to regulation. And I think more and more of these kind of financial instruments are finding their way into retail spaces and a lot of other brands. And so using some of that AI in order to take in a lesser amount, less invasive level of questions and information about a particular individual in order to kind of pre-qualify them or qualify them for being a suitable candidate for a type of product. And so while this is a payment card example, I think that this kind of technique probably will continue to pervade insurance industries, mashing up with the rest of financial services, et cetera. And so we've got a lot of predictions associated with how this tech is real and practical and doing work today.
Okay, watching our time, I'm going to fly through the next two examples. The first one is DoorDash, who's actually not using AI necessarily for their own purposes, but for the purposes of the restaurants that they serve. So it's an interesting diversification where they're basically saying, hey, listen, instead of you having to answer the phone at your single restaurant location, you can now use our AI tool to answer that phone for you and collect those orders on your behalf. So you're focused on the food production and getting it out the door on time. So an interesting diversification of what they can do for the customer that is the business they're trying to serve by offering up AI utility that actually enables them to free up more time that could deliver more volume.
And to be clear, these are the orders that DoorDash would not have otherwise seen. So they can start to understand the rest of the pie pardon the pun, at a particular restaurant, at a particular brand. And I think that opening up the aperture is something that will continue with good pace in 2024 and beyond. Yes, using tools and tech like AI, but not only doing that, so that we've got a less myopic view of our customers or users.
Yeah, good call out. The last one here is around Lufthansa, who is turning your plane ticket into an NFT. And, we talked earlier about gamification that has part to do with this, but it's also the idea then that they can track behaviors by using the NFT that are micro behaviors. They're not just scanning to get through the gate or scanning to get through security. They're now the other things that you happen to be doing in the airport or during that duration of travel that you now scan this NFT for because it's a gamified experience. Well, that requires AI capabilities to be able to respond to those activities that I'm now doing in a very personalized way, to be able to recognize them, give them an appropriate response, et cetera. So as we see some of the movement into some of these new tools, such as NFT, I think it'll require a certain capability within AI in order to deliver on the expected outcome of that experience. So we had a spot for questions, and I recognize we've got all of 1 minute left. Sonia, I don't know if there's one that you want to pick that we can try and answer, but I know a bunch came through. And what we'll do as part of the follow-up to this, we'll be happy to provide some of those sort of question and answers when we're sending out some of the other slides, et cetera, that come from this presentation. So you have a greater taste of what we see happening in the marketplace through the Market Intel Trend subscription.
Perfect. Well, thank you. I don't know whether we'll have time. We've pretty much hit our time. So what I would say is this, like Megan said, if there are additional questions, please send them through. If there's interest in re-seeing this presentation, if we want to expand it to a larger group, if there's other opportunities, we are more than happy to connect. And on that note, I want to thank you both for this great hour and looking forward to getting more questions and some feedback along the way.
It's going to be a fun 2024.
Thank you so much for joining us today, everyone.